Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Ayesha Kazim. I'm one of the operations team members, a part of the African NFT community. And today we're going to talk about DAOs, what we've been doing with the community, and just generally how our next steps. So maybe to start, if everyone can introduce themselves.
So hi everyone, my name is Nygilia, also an NFT space fantasy future gal. So I do a lot of mixed media art, but as part of African NFT community, I also help with social media management.
Hey everybody, I'm Vintage Mozart, and well, on the name it's Liam Vries, but I'm the founder of the African NFT community, and I just help around with like everything else.
Hey guys, my name is Michael. I'm the founder of a DAO called Metaphrase. It's an investment DAO based between Lagos primarily and London somewhat. We just basically help young Black Africans get into the Web3 space. We've acquired a number of interesting blue chip NFTs, over the last 12 to 14 months, fractionalized them, and we're just trying to create more accessibility, more pathways for young Black people who are kind of like hard to reach.
Amazing. So first, I would love to know about how you guys all got started in the NFT space. Can you take me through your origins, what drew you to Web3, and what you're truly hoping to do in the next couple years in the space?
Yeah, so I came into the NFT space officially in March 2021, but I started learning about it in January 2021 through like Clubhouse, sitting in rooms and just like hearing about what digital assets and what this space was going to be. And at the time, luckily, I had a really good remote job during lockdown, during COVID. And, I spent some money and like started with OpenSea, and then was really excited to, push not only like my Afrofuturistic styles, but I feel like NFTs have given the breathing room for experimental artists to really thrive and not feel so bubbled into one spot. So I think as a creative, now that I've been in the space for a little over a year now, it's really driven me to help push other communities, but also to continue pursuing my craft.
And I've been in the NFT space since like November 2020, like just around the pandemic starting, around that period. And I kind of got intrigued by it because I'm a digital artist by profession, but I was struggling in like the Web2 community and trying to find like a means and a way of trying to get engrossed in something a little bit better. And as I continued, because one of the reasons the African NFT community was founded was I was based in Zimbabwe, and crypto is not legal. It's not have any legal tender there. You cannot purchase it. So initially I had to send money all the way to England, get a MetaMask wallet, and then get my cousin to like fund it for me. And it was kind of like a little bit of a situational problem. And that's one of the things that I wanted to fix and try and help like in Africa. So when the community started initially, it was kind of like getting sales and helping some of my peers like mint their first NFTs and getting people along, and it started off as like a group chat. So that was like one of my primary motives. My primary motive was actually just to succeed as an artist, but then the goal became a little bit bigger as I transitioned and started to understand the gravity of the space.
So I guess I started in the space investing in Bitcoin, Ethereum, maybe 2016, 17. I got into NFTs maybe about 2019, and I guess at the time, I kind of like stumbled upon NFTs, stumbled upon like CryptoPunks, and it looked kind of cool. Some guys I was like, following on Twitter at the time, some guys that I thought I respected in the space had these like cool, like cartoon-looking things on their profiles, and I was like, this guy's pretty smart. Why did he buy this like cartoon thing? And then I found out more about the punks. Didn't buy straight away. Decided like, okay, fine, I want to start buying, art. If I'm gonna buy something that's, art-based, let me buy something that could potentially hang on my wall. Got into Super Rare, started buying some stuff early. Nifty Gateway, had a lot of fun there as well. Some early ferocious stuff, X-Copy and stuff like that. Finally bought a CryptoPunk, delved deep into that community. Jumped into the Bored Apes community as well after that, and then I just kept buying, and it's like a rabbit hole, right? You just keep going down it and down it and down it, and got a lot of stuff. I think I have over 3,000 NFTs now, and I think I went to NFT NYC 2021, and I was going to all these fun events and fun things, and I honestly just wasn't seeing enough Black people, and I was like, yo, like this is cool. I have fun with all these guys on Discord, on Twitter. But yeah, I mean, I want to listen to hip hop. I want to catch some trips with some of my Black brothers and everything. And I took it back to Lagos. I went back because I need to start talking to people, start building out, start educating people on what's going on. And so before I actually started the DAO, I just started doing some hangouts. Did a hangout in London, did a hangout in New York, did a party at this year's NFT NYC 2022, like an African community party. And yeah, so with the DAO, with Metaphrase, we've been able to acquire things like, land from other side, Akutars, we acquired 2 Moonbirds, Macy, and to me, just educating young black people, primarily from the African continent, that you can actually, invest in these blue chip NFTs and, fractionalize them. So obviously, the cost of some of these NFTs are ridiculously, they're ridiculously high right now. The average person across the globe can't afford it, let alone the average African. So, so with Metaphrase DAO, we have done a lot around education, and also, putting that education to action. Getting into communities, getting young black people from the continent into communities, and learning about NFTs, not just gambling. I hate speculation. I try to advise them as much as possible, and I felt that by getting more people to buy into these blue chip NFTs, on a fractionalized basis, they can get to understand, where this space is kind of like going. It's still obviously very experimental, but with the DAO, we've been able to educate people on going the right way as opposed to, the other way, where we've seen 95% of NFTs go to zero. So yeah, that's where we are now.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people can definitely relate to that, falling down the rabbit hole. The way I came into the NFT space was as well during March 2020. I just started spending time on Clubhouse. I was working at an archival organization at the time, and my boss actually encouraged me to look into NFTs following the Beeple sale and how it could impact the historical preservation of different photo archives, and seeing how this technology can be used to kind of create collections of works that have often been forgotten for future generations. So I think just seeing the breadth of utility that comes with NFTs and Web3 was really what pushed myself as an artist, but also as someone who believes in preservation and the importance of collecting archives for future generations. And I would love to know too, just building off of that, how has finding your community in this space kind of influenced you to stay, or influenced what you've been able to achieve in the space? Like, obviously, as you were talking about, there still isn't a lot of black people in the space, and we're still constantly working to bring more people in. So how has, finding not only your personal communities, but building communities kind of pushed you to think about different ways that you can push the whole space forward?
Yeah, so I think the one thing that really opened my eyes was actually didn't even start with the Black and African community. I kind of just dove in the rabbit hole and just met a bunch of scattered people along the way. And I realized how, being in this space and, navigating it alone is very difficult. And it's really hard to, feel like, maybe this person genuinely cares, or that person might. But fun fact, there are a lot of very scamish moments that do happen in this space. And when you do find your community, or just people that you've grown to really, be a part of something as the space grows, I feel like that was one of the most valuable things I got to, experience. One artist, O Studios, I met when I was in this rabbit hole finding people, and, we kind of stuck together, ended up in, a much smaller DAO, early on, I would say probably April 2021. And after that, we started kind of thriving and, finding the groups of people that we continue to resonate with. So I think one powerful thing about being in this space is it's cool having your circle, but I think it's even more empowering to, connect with other groups of people and then bring those people to your people. So when I got to find Black NFTR and African NFT community and kind of grew with them, it helped me also connect my circle to their big group. So I feel like when I got the chance to do that, and now that being in the position I'm in as a creative in the space, I feel it's really important, with the privilege I have to travel to these events and talk about and help promote artists. I think that's something quite special to do, because a lot of times there are restrictions for artists that can't be there to help promote themselves. So yeah, I just feel it's one healthy ecosystem of people supporting each other, and I think that's what the NFT space reflects.
For myself, I kind of resonate with the story that Nygilia just kind of came through, but we all started on Clubhouse. I think everyone kind of remembers that period, but for me it was a little bit different, because I was coming from the perspective of, I even remember my internet connection being bad, and you're going into rooms, and majority of the rooms I did go into were white, and it was kind of very, very centric, it was either Eurocentric or American, and it was something a little bit different hearing your accents. So that's what kind of gravitated to the community expanding, was hearing people that sounded like me. it just wasn't people that spoke like me or did the same thing as me, but when you hear people that sound like you, it kind of like resonated, and there was a little bit of a balance. So the African NFT community, it grew exponentially. Like in the space of a year, it's like 30,000 people, and which is quite impressive to the extent that we now have people in our channels and in our rankings, and every single person is building the community together with the hope of a greater outcome. Can I talk about our achievements as well? I think one of our best achievements is we started off just as like a social hub, and then we became an artist incubator, and then now we're even doing curations. We just partnered with Nifty Gateway, did our first publishing, and we did it in 2 sectors. And the amazing thing was we had 12 artists from 12 different nations, and this is something pretty uncommon in the African space as well. We have the heavy-hitting countries, but there were people from Cameroon, there were people from Eritrea that participated in this, and these are like very, very overlooked nations. I'm from Zimbabwe myself as well. I only know 4 Zimbabwean NFT artists, so this was kind of a very, very big milestone that, besides the artists being exposed to the world, they managed to make money off this as well. These are like some of the little inhibiting factors that they didn't have, and a year ago or so, this wasn't possible, and I'm glad with the achievements of the community itself, because there's so many hardworking curators and developers within it. And yeah, I pass it over to you, Mike.
Yeah, you know, I just definitely want to commend the work that African NFT Club has done. You know, I've collected, you know, some works from some of the artists, you know, under that DAO. I love the fact that they push the conversation forward, that they're educating a lot of the creators that are coming to this space. And yeah, you know, it's all about community. You know, I'm part of, you know, several different communities. And I think that, look, we need as many communities working alongside each other as possible, because that's what brings the flavor to the space. You know, so there's sometimes I'm in some, you know, some Discords or at some Hangouts, and I just feel like, you know, culturally, there's that disconnect that the Web3 space is supposed to create, you know, even more accessibility, even more togetherness, and then you still find that, you know, kind of like groups hive off and everything. So my experience, I mean, it's been good, definitely. Like, I always felt welcome in groups, you know, and I think the great thing about the space is no one really cares what you look like. No, most of us have like our avatars as our digital identities anyway. So you just jump into Discord, you don't know who you're talking to, and I think that's one of the great things about the space. It does initially allow for, you know, that kind of like prejudice not being there. But I think that, you know, as we've seen, with as much as we talk about being in the metaverse, we're still human beings. We still like human physical contact. And communities at the front and center of that. So each of the communities I'm in, I definitely do my best to speak up for my own community, make sure that, you know, we're getting as many people in there as possible to obviously, you know, give that flavor that's needed. And that's the only way that we're going to actually grow the space. You know, educating one another and actually just, you know, partnering. So I'm hoping to see a lot more of that. I'm in talks with a bunch of other communities that I'm part of. And I actually was glad to see the guys from the Nouns, you know, here talking about Nouns, because I've been looking at Nouns for a long period of time. You know, considered, you know, delving into the community. I understand it's this big experiment around governance. Love a lot of the projects that I've seen around them do. One of them was Nouns Vision. You know, I love how that came together. I don't know if the Nouns Visions guys are here, but I've always felt that, you know, this is, okay, there we go. So, you know, shout out to the Nouns. You know, I'm definitely coming to see how, you know, we can actually potentially work together, because I think what I've seen about the Nouns and the proposals, it's global. And, you know, I love how they're using capital to do good. And I think that's one thing that we can actually, you know, take a note from what they're doing. I didn't get it at first. I'm still learning about the Nouns, but I definitely will encourage as many African groups as I come across to definitely reach out, understand what Nouns is, and get into it like I'm planning to. So, I mean, but that's how you build communities. That's how you collaborate, and that's how we drive the space forward. So I definitely think that's something that's super important for us to start doing more of. Connecting, collaborating more, traveling where we can, because a lot of the cool stuff happens in Miami, in New York, and you know, in Dubai. I've been to a couple of things there, and recently Singapore. But, you know, I'm hoping that we can actually start, you know, driving more conversations, you know, getting more done globally, having more of that reaching deep into Web3 and what it can provide for us. I think that's super important, and we're probably on the cusp of that now anyway.
Definitely. And so obviously for today's talk, you know, our topic is DAO. So I'd love to know as well, where did you first come across the term? How has that kind of influenced your journey in the space, your relationship to different DAOs, and what that means in place of communities, like how you can continue to grow and build in the space? Can you just take me through, your relationship to DAOs and how it's kind of cultivated your own journey in the space?
Yeah, so I believe when I first started again, like back in March 2021. Again, like everyone was kind of had their own groups, but then when I started seeing the term DAOs, it started to kind of form out of what the PFP projects were doing and, with Discord and kind of how they were bringing these people together to form their own kind of like, I guess I would say hierarchy and structure. And for me, I guess it's very relatable to like the real world and kind of trying to integrate that into the space. But I feel that now DAOs today are very much more of a, I guess they try to differentiate the different meanings of it and like the subcultures that can come built out of the original meaning of DAO. So now you have like DAOs that focus on curation, DAOs that focus on, something for video games, something specifically, maybe even for poetry. Like they kind of have their own ways of governance, but depending on the subject and depending on like their overall goal. So I think now seeing how DAOs are developing, it's quite an interesting moment that we are in. And I think for us, for African NFT community, we look at that and we continue to try to decide what's going to be best for us to grow moving forward.
Yeah, just to expand on what Nygilia said, my journey with DAOs is I never discovered like what the correct thing is. As you're going through, it's kind of transitioning to what your DAO wants to do. Like for us, being a publisher, being a curator, like as we mentioned with the whole Nifty Gateway thing, we worked with a company called Insert Think, and they basically created a membership pass for our community. Because our community is so large, we cannot tackle every single person when we want to do events or curation. So what we did is we used Polygon. This is way before the merge happened because it was a little bit more eco-friendly. We airdropped the people that signed up for the form, and those are the membership passes, and those are the people that we used for the Nifty Gateway curation. That's going to be continuous as well. I was the first curator. The second one is happening on the 15th of November, and we're going to be doing something maybe bi-weekly or bi-monthly, bi-monthly or every fortnight, just so that everyone in the community can have an opportunity to have that upper echelon experience. So we want everyone in our community to feel special. That's our main priority. Majority are artists, like we're all artists ourselves. And that's our main thing, because we're not going to be solving problems that, should I say, don't cater to us. But we can solve artistic problems, and that's what our main goals are.
So yeah, I mean, to me, like it was, just starting up, like I said, it was that need for that accessibility that we didn't have in Web 2 or in Finance 2.0. It's hard enough to set up a bank account, in some countries on the continent, let alone be able to, formulate capital across different geographies. And I think obviously the decentralized nature of being able to form a DAO allowed us to have, young guys invest from Zimbabwe, from Kenya, from Nigeria, from South Africa, even to the young guys we have got, young Black Africans in London, in New York, who have obviously, bought into some of the projects that we've invested in. You can't do that with Finance 2.0. You can't do that in Web 2.0. So it's just being able to unlock that capital, unlock that capital formation opportunity. And that's been the key thing, that we've obviously, preached about. I think for us, it didn't start off as that. We did start off just trying to connect with one another as human beings. And then it developed into an investment DAO. And I think, look, DAOs to me, they're just companies, right? You have companies do everything. You have social DAOs, you have investment DAOs, you have art DAOs, you have art companies, you have, VCs, you have different types of companies. And it's just that, and I think once it's a bit clearer, in the crypto space, we tend to use these kind of obtuse words. And anytime I talk about DAOs, people are like, okay, what does that mean? And then I say, oh, it's a decentralized autonomous. They're like, what are you talking about? So it's just it's literally a company that is kind of formed on chain. And I think as long as you break it down a bit more for people they understand. And I think that was one of the hardest things to me, trying to get people to understand about these DAOs, because people can't say, oh, how did you find out about punks early? How did you find out about Bored Apes early? How do I buy this NFT? How do I buy that NFT? And then after they find out, the prices are kind of quite kind of scary. And then once they understand, this is the actual power of a DAO. It's transparent. It's instant, it's decentralized, it's immutable. It's immutable. Let me just leave it as that. And yes, and just educating people on the opportunities around these DAOs has been interesting. I've helped other DAOs form. There's a couple of music DAOs that I've helped form. My background has been in the music industry. I used to run Sony Music in West Africa years back. And I've also helped some other investment clubs form as well. So yeah, it's advising, it's educating, and it's also learning. I think that's a key thing for me to also say, we're still in a very highly experimental phase. You know, DAO tooling is still growing out. We use stuff like, you know, Gnosis, Snapshot, and what have you. You know, I know other DAOs use other kinds of tools, but I know the tooling is still actually developing. But yeah, I'm just excited to talk about DAOs, excited to grow, you know, my DAO, and excited to help other DAOs grow as well.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people can definitely relate to kind of being taken aback by the jargon that comes with the NFT space, and a lot of it is just learning as you go along. I'd love to dive in as well to maybe the more nitty-gritty side of DAOs, like how do you deal with when it comes to hierarchy, and obviously the whole premise of DAOs is everyone working together kind of on the same level. So when you're dealing with the growth and expansion of your different communities, how do you then deal with allocating leadership roles and different projects to different people, as well as making sure that everyone in the community feels heard and feels like their vote matters?
Okay, yeah. For us, I would like to say we have like a governance council. Like these are the main people, the earliest adopters of the African NFT community and the ones that were assisting. Like Nygilia does a fantastic job on our social media team. Ayesha's partnerships, well, she does a lot. Like, should I say, everything that is grant-related, partnership-related, or sometimes even copywriting as well. We work in a conducive ecosystem. Like, I'm a designer by professional, so I'm more focused on the branding of the community when we're doing Twitter spaces or graphic design or anything like that. So that's what my main priority is. And when you get an ecosystem of people with unique talents, it's so easy for people to slot themselves in, and then the roles just kind of get filled. In the future, I believe the governance council is going to be voting in members that want to take up roles so that when people start retiring, because I think that's the most important thing, is keeping your DAO fresh. Or there's always a fresh idea. Even myself as a founder, I can still listen to people, I can still get ideas from people, but the legs have already been put and the foundation has already been put in place, and it's now about it growing in the near future, should I say, maybe the next 4 or 5 years, and how we will develop.
Yeah, it's not easy, to be quite honest, you know, when it comes to, you know, leadership and just driving forward a DAO, because they're supposed to be obviously, you know, decentralized, you know, it's the community that's supposed to lead the project or what have you, but sometimes it gets super hard to find, you know, energetic individuals who are ready to push forward. So for us, it has been about, you know, first it was just me, you know, being like, okay, fine, this guy looks super energetic. You know, are you interested in doing this or doing that? It starts off very rudimentary. And then obviously as you develop, you obviously start, you know, can form a council. You can then, you know, start voting on who can do what and allocating based on interest. But it's just been that developing process for us to try and obviously understand, you know, how best to push the DAO forward, how best to make sure that we stick to our mandate, how best to make sure that we stay fresh, stay energetic, especially at this time of the market where, you know, things are definitely quiet. You know, a lot of the interest that was there in 2021 has probably, you know, waned. I mean, it's a great time to actually identify key players who are obviously serious about, you know, building out DAOs or building out, you know, this. I can only talk about my community. But it's just not easy. I think I'll just say that, to be very honest. It's not easy. I think, like I said, it still goes back to that experimentation. These are still companies. I mean, I've run several startups, and it's always hard in the early stages to kind of like you as obviously, I call myself the chief community officer, have to be as locked in as possible, have to be driving as much as possible, have to be as energetic as possible, and then you're able to then obviously identify those around you who are then there to help push your DAO forward. So there is definitely still a level of centralization that happens in DAOs. I know that we're trying to get away from that in Web3. How effective that will be in the long term, I'm not personally sure, because it's super hard to run a startup, a decentralized startup. You still need that founder, that CEO, to drive a lot in the early stages and then obviously get it off the ground. And I think that's where we are still in the DAO space.
Thank you. And with that, I think we're out of time. So thank you so much to all of our speakers and to everyone for listening to our talk.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys.